Welcome to another episode of our Conversations with the Ambassador. With me today, I have Ambassador Peterson. Welcome, ma'am. And then we also have the Deputy Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Themba Masuku. Welcome, sir. Today, the conversation is everything about gender. I know you may be so eager to ask any questions outside this. Please, whatever comments that you have, let's restrict it to gender issues today. That's our main topic. Okay, I'll open up the conversation with asking both of them to explain to us, nice and slowly, why gender? Why are they so passionate about this topic of gender? Why is it so relevant in this day and age? I'll begin with the DPM.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all. This is a very interesting topic that we're going to be covering today, relating to gender inequalities. Why gender? I think it is important to note that societies are so full of inequalities, so social inequalities, and most of these are sort of skewed against women. So the importance of gender, of the gender discussion, is that we need to try and move this topic to a point where everybody understands that we are all equal, whether you're a woman or a man. And so this must provide same opportunities for both. It shouldn't be this work is for women, this work is for men. So this is why we need to promote that, and all of us need to get involved and make sure it happens. It's our chance, it's our opportunity. We're here now and talking about gender. So we would like to invite people to participate and talk about it.
Wonderful, sir. Ma'am, the very same question to you. Why are you so passionate about the subject of gender? And can you explicitly draw a line between gender and feminism? Because some people argue that, yes, you're talking about gender because you're trying to take the places of men in society as women.
So before I answer your question, I just want to note to the viewers, you may have noticed in previous sessions we weren't wearing masks because we have plexiglass dividers between us. And at the time, we felt like that was an appropriate precaution. But as more and more research is done and people understand better how COVID works, and there's a lot of research now about how the virus can linger in the air in enclosed spaces, we're keeping our masks on tonight as a measure of making sure that we are protecting everyone around us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So from the US government perspective, our policy priorities, I have always liked to sort of group them under responsiveness, accountability, and inclusion. And gender really cuts across all three of those. And it's partly driven most heavily by our HIV/AIDS work. And we've had particular opportunity to see the way in which HIV had a disproportionate impact on women. And infection rates for adolescent girls and young women are much higher than they are for men of their same age cohort. And that kind of gets to the structural issues of what is putting young women in these vulnerable positions. And we come in, our funding streams, our efforts are focused on addressing the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, but we've really got to think about the whole universe that surrounds that. And so this inequality piece is something that we have to get at if we're going to really get at the whole picture of how are we going to tackle the disease, the impacts of the disease, and really set women and men up so that both have all of the tools that they need to thrive and survive.
Okay. So how far have we come with issues of gender, DPM? Like this is a subject that has been on the public agenda for years. But as Eswatini, knowing our culture and every other influences that we may have, are we making any great strides in that regard?
All right. No, thank you. Thank you very much. I would say we are, but not enough. We have really not done enough as a society, because I think the danger in discussing gender issues is that people always think government has to do that. And I'm saying we, society, have to do it because we may have as a government all the policies and action plans, etc. But if it is not being absorbed by the society that has to change this situation, then we have a problem, because these inequalities are, of course, embedded in every society. We can't be unique as a nation of a Eswatini in terms of gender inequalities. And we need to be looking at it from that perspective. I think you asked a question earlier on, I think, asking the ambassador to sort of give that clarity between feminism and gender. I think we need to clearly understand that gender is not feminism. It refers to both sexes, so that when we talk about the equality, we're saying let's raise everybody to the same platform. What have we done in this country? I think we have tried. I'm not going to defend government, but I'm going to state facts. You may remember in the year 2010, when I was the Deputy Prime Minister then, we launched the gender policy. And that was done by Her Majesty, the Queen Mother. And we prepared a work plan, plan of action. And from there, we would have expected that not just the political strata, but going down, everybody should have taken that and run with it. So there's a problem somewhere there, but we'll come back later to that. However, as a country, I think we have made some progress. I wouldn't be particularly excited about that progress, but if we're looking at 75% progress in achieving gender equality across all development sectors, I think it's encouraging to have that positive mood. I would like to see 100%. But for now, we, according to the Gender and Development Index of 2017, this is where we were. And to achieve that, we're looking at about 10 thematic areas that are probably referred to as we continue. So there is progress, but not magnificent.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Peterson, have you seen the progress that he's referring to?
Well, I have. And you know, I have the opportunity of coming in for kind of a short snapshot of just a few years of seeing a country. And I will be honest, it's not often in my career that I've had a chance to see actually more than one item that shows real progress happen in that fairly small time frame. So, you know, you have the huge success of the Sexual Offenses and Domestic Violence Act. You have the ruling on marital power. Mm-hmm. The ways in which people, particularly the magistrates and prosecutors, have moved to quickly put the SODV Act into action. You know, I think there is real tangible progress there. Now, to your point about just how long it takes everyone everywhere to do these things, and I'm mindful, you know, laws and policies are necessary, they're important, they help officially move the ball down the road or down the field. But that aspect of changing mindsets and attitudes, that is an all-day, everyday effort.
Absolutely.
That people forget. And I think we particularly run the risk of forgetting when we do have major legislative victories. You know, if you look at the United States right now and our issues with race in this moment, I think if you look back to the events in Ferguson, Missouri, when President Obama was in office, you had the same kind of people going out to the streets and expressing anger about the very issues that we're talking about today. But I think a lot of people let themselves get complacent because there was this notion of there was such a big step forward with having an African American president that not enough people took on the issue at that moment in time. A lot of people did take it on, and I don't want to minimize the work of the groups that have tried to raise awareness and work productively in this space. But you know, you flip that back to the gender space, and you look at how long, first of all, it took women to claim the right to vote in the United States, and then how long it's taken us to get numbers of women in public office up to a respectable level. You know, we're still fighting that battle. So it is, you know, it's something that takes constant and persistent work, but you do have these sort of beacons of light that I think show that you have been making progress along the way.
No.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I think I agree with Ambassador Lisa here. What I want to add is that we tend not to promote the positives that we see. We're always looking for the negative, who just love it. And I do love it, I'll tell you that. And for me, it is trying to bring that equality that we're trying to grapple with at the moment. So the pieces of legislation, I look at the Children's Act. It protects that girl and gives that girl the opportunity to be protected and grow up understanding issues. But having said that, there are many other pieces of legislation. But having said that, I think where we have lost it, it's on socialization. You know, we are socialized, that our mindsets are in such a manner that we think differently as a society. You know, this patriarchal thinking, which is perpetually being embedded in our minds. You know, when you have a son in the house, you'll tell them to go and wash the car. You will not say to the girl, go and wash the car. You will say to the girl, go and cook. You will not say to the boy, go and cook. So this, I think every parent is guilty of this. And therefore, we should look at that together and say, how do we want to change this? Are we going to, as a nation, going to progress from the 75% that I've just mentioned to 100%? How are we going to do that? We're not going to do that via legislation, I can assure you that. Because people break the laws, they are in prison, they are this and that. We need to go back to basics and do positive parenting, which is a policy in the Office of the Deputy Prime Minister that we're pushing now. Because if we can engage in that, then I think the generation that will come after me will not be complaining as we complain today, that it is difficult to move to gender equality.
Okay. You mentioned that when we're talking about gender, it doesn't necessarily mean females. It's like both males and females. And then you're also saying that it's not just a legislative issue. It has to trickle down to every individual doing something to make a change. And then when you're interacting with the different sectors and going down to the communities, where do you see the hold up? Like, is it females or males who are opposed to these changes as we're moving forward?
That question comes to me.
Yeah.
Look, I've said to my male counterparts, we should take this issue and make it our own. Because we've had the women shout and scream and, or, saying, hey, we need this. And we have not done it as men. So my answer to that question is that when it comes down to basics, we have delegated the issue of socialization to the women, like it's the duty of a woman to socialize. It is not the duty of the men to do that, and I'm saying that attitude is wrong. It should be the duty of both to do that. So me, personally, I would like to invite the men to stand up and say, hey, I want my mother to be equal. I want my sister to be that deputy prime minister. I want my aunt to be that central bank governor or something. And if we can get to deal with it in that aspect, then what you asked me would change. Yes, it is there. It is from our socialization that we believe it's women who must bring up the kids.
But I also think it's important, in the absence of enough women in elected office, I think it's important to find creative ways of making sure that women are at the table. In the disability rights movement, they started the expression, nothing about us without us.
Yes.
And we need to remember that around women and youth as well, that it's one thing to talk about, we should do X, Y, or Z with women in mind. It's another thing to have the women there and
Absolutely.
able to speak about what their experience actually is.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with you, 100%. But what I would like to add, though, is that if it's complacency, I should say, I want to say, once you have 4 women in parliament who are there because of the 2018 legislation, and everybody says, no, we'll get legislation to get more women, which means now we have to amend the legislation and get more women there. I'm saying let's take the responsibility as society to push those women without legislation. Yes, legislation will help, but let us do the advocacy now and promote those women. There are many absolutely capable and intelligent women there, bright women, some brighter than me, if I, or brighter than men, I should say. I'm pointing at me because I'm a man. But the women who are brighter than men, who are sitting out there, we know about them, but we're not pushing them through the society avenue. We want legislation to push them in. And I'm saying we must be responsible as a society, not just Eswatini, throughout the world. There are problems.
And what are some of the arguments that like people have forwarded, like that you have had, as behind them not being comfortable with electing or putting women into leadership positions?
Gee, you put me in a very tight corner here, because what I will say is perhaps some people may frown upon it. The thing is, what I've had, because I engage on this topic I'm very passionate about this topic, and I engage. They are saying it is women who don't promote other women. That is one. Number two, I think there's this socialization that when you leave home as a woman and you become deputy prime minister and you are sitting here in the evening and you are not home as a woman, you know, you come home and, you know, people look at you and say, hey, a woman must be in the house by 5 or whatever, even if she was. So again, it goes back to the socialization problem. Those are the two major issues that I've had during my interactions.
If I can just throw out a suggestion as well. You know, people are very focused on the importance of mentors. And for some reason, they seem to be stuck on the notion that women should have women mentors. And I have to tell you, I came up in the Foreign Service. All of my bosses were men for the majority of my career. I could count the number of female direct supervisors I had on probably one hand up until the later years, just because of the way our own structure, our own system had that imbalance of getting people into the system and keeping people in the system. So it was, you know, male boss after male boss after male boss.
Yeah.
But I was lucky in that I had really good male bosses who did look out for me and guide me, and they were there when, you know, if I had questions about how to advance or how to do something, they were always available to me. And I think being conscious about the ways in which men now can mentor women and sort of prepare them for those next steps, that also helps build that institutional culture.
Oh. Okay, interesting. I'm looking at you, Madam Ambassador. You are a woman in this leadership position. And then have you ever felt, because there's the talk that sometimes women feel like they're being held into unrealistic standards, like when they make a mistake, it's blown out of proportion as compared to their male counterparts. Have you ever felt that you are being judged in a different way than your male counterparts?
You know, there is not anything that particularly comes to my mind in that regard. I will say, you know, no one ever came out and said it, but there was more than one occasion when I felt like I knew I needed to be home. You know, my husband is very good at being, you know, the equal parent, but I still needed to be home.
Yes.
And there was a certain amount of guilt and feeling of pressure around actually leaving the office at a reasonable hour. That's the only case where I kind of felt like that's where that pressure came in.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that. I believe when you are parenting, you all have a part to play. So if you're not home by 5, the partner who is at home will play their role. This is about working together. And again, Ambassador, don't feel guilty. If you're not home, your husband is going to take care of the rest and teach the children how to wash dishes and how to cook. And when you're here, you definitely you're going to bring that motherly love, which is lacking, which is different from fatherly love. I can explain that later, but not tonight. But we all have roles to play. One of the reasons perhaps we're having difficulties and challenges these days is because of that family structure that has disintegrated, where you find one parent trying to play both roles, and it cannot succeed because, you know, as a man, the things that are understanding, you know, the hormonal imbalances and all the things that take place in me are probably not going to take place in you. so the behavior and the reaction. So you need both of us to be able to harness and manage those development issues in the child that we are bringing up.
The greatest challenge in this gender, when you're talking about gender issues, is gender-based violence, which I guess everything that we have discussed, the problems with society and everything, contributes to this violence that we're seeing every day. How far has Eswatini come, besides just having SODV Act? Do you think we are moving forward? Are there any like positive changes that we're seeing in addressing gender-based violence?
Yeah. From where I'm sitting, I am seeing progress. I'm seeing numbers actually coming down. But this doesn't mean that high profile, because when people hear of that high profile domestic violence issue, they will say, oh, it's not working. But no, the numbers are showing that it's working. I've been in buses. I've been in, bus stations. I've been everywhere trying to say to the nation that I belong to the society that I belong to, it is not right to be violent. They want to hear someone say that. And when we say that, we're expecting someone out there to say, wait a minute, we shouldn't be violent. And what we're trying to do is to get everybody involved. It's going to take some time, but the piece of legislation that has become so famous in this country is working. And the justice system is helping, but we cannot deal with the 10 cases that we receive every day and hope the magistrate is going to sit there and say, oh yeah, you did this, guilty, 10 years. Because they have to sit there and think and work through it. We as government are pushing education, educate people to understand why violence is bad. What are the consequences of violence in the family, in the community, in society in general, in the economic sector, etc. So the appeal is always sit down, think about the violation that you meet to the next person.
Can I jump in on that? The area that does worry me is the post-COVID impact.
Oh.
And this is a phenomenon worldwide, that lockdowns, to whatever degree they happened, left abused individuals with their abusers and limited opportunity to avoid that abuse and limited opportunity to report. And so I don't think we yet have a feel, either in Eswatini or in the world as a whole, for just how much damage has been done in this period and how we're going to sort of wrap our arms around regaining the progress that has been made. Go ahead.
No. I just want to jump in here because this is the numbers that are coming out there are horrible. They are horrible. And it is children as young as 5 who get raped. They're sitting there with the monster. Instead of going to grade 0, they're sitting there with the monster who is going to create havoc. Just last week, there was a report that in one school, 30 children were pregnant. And when the high school opened, the Form 5s, there were about 10% of the girls who didn't return to school were pregnant. Now, what we're trying to check now, because that is domestic violence, that is sexual abuse, that is rape. Now, the problem here is the government structures, the police, can never police each family. to make sure that it doesn't happen. So it has to be the people sitting there who must look at their child and say, I need to protect this child. Who must not look at their child as something to violate, you know. So that's where the problem is here. And I would like people to move away from thinking government should protect the children. We've had the laws to protect the children, but it goes down to the individual to make sure that their own blood is protected. Their own blood is protected. And that becomes very fundamental in fighting this. It's a pandemic. This thing is in itself a pandemic. So after COVID-19, I'm just so terrified because you're going to have children born of children. Children who might die because they're not ready, their bodies are not ready to give birth naturally. Some of the children won't even go to the clinics because the attitude of the society when they see a 13-year-old pregnant, it's not like, oh, they raped this child, I'm going to report to the police to investigate. But it's like, oh, so she's also sleeping now.
Yeah.
And that kills the child. It's double tragedy. The child has been raped. The child is hearing all these bad comments about themselves. And they may even commit suicide because of that. So I get emotional when I talk about this because I've seen in my office people coming to talk. This afternoon is one case where I got very emotional. It's a bad thing that is happening.
What do you believe needs to be done going forward, especially when you're talking about families? We have had this sort of saying, whereby everything is swept under the carpet. Somehow, maybe a driving force may be poverty in the family. The woman is not empowered enough to say no to the husband doing that to her child because she fears, and then what is left of me? If he goes to jail, then what happens to the family? What can we do as a society, as neighbors, as families to try to work around that issue and make sure that everybody is protected in a family structure?
So we must not necessarily think of the now. We must think of the future. Take this child who is going to be violated. And if you say this child, if we report to the police, something else will happen, I appreciate that. But you have destroyed the child by not reporting the matter. So you're trying to protect yourself instead of protecting your responsibility, that child. And that happens, but the SODV Act is clear on what you've just said, dividend. If you don't report a case, you are equally guilty. You need to report the cases so that I understand the jail, the jails are full. But we can't say, the jails are full, go rape, it's okay. No, we shouldn't do that. We will be abdicating our responsibility as society. We have to stand firm. If it means doing something outside of the box concerning those cases, you may as well say all those who have committed minor cases, theft or something, minor cases, move them out of prisons, get these criminals, because these are hardcore criminals and they commit grievous crimes.
Can I pick up on one point that you made there, that women may hesitate to speak up about an abusive relationship because they don't have the economic ability to stand on their own, and so they make the calculation that I have to put up with this because this is the roof over my head. And I think this is where the conversation around gender-based violence circles back to the original gender equity question. Making investments that give young girls the ability to look to futures that are going to give them the ability to stand on their own 2 feet, and give women the ability to have their own income streams that can back them up if they find themselves in that kind of situation, is one of the tools that you need in the kit to really effectively make it so that women have options or men have options. You know, we shouldn't fall into the trap of saying only women are abused.
True.
But it is that, you know, things come full circle, that gender-based violence also, there's an economic component, and you have to sort of look at it holistically. I like to think in terms of, you know, our trafficking in persons engagements are focused on prevention, prosecution, and protection. And, you know, there's a comment here saying that SODV is only for penalizing individuals. And I can understand why you would see it that way, but part of the purpose of a law like that is to make people think twice. So they see that someone has been penalized, they know that there are repercussions, maybe they need to find a different way of channeling their anger, their aggression. Prosecution, SODV Act. I do think an area that Eswatini should focus on is sexual harassment in the workplace. And setting up structures so that workplaces are dealing with this in a way that doesn't have to end in criminal prosecution. You know, if such cases are handled properly, you keep both workers and you find ways for both workers to continue working together, but not with one harassing the other. And then the protection piece. You know, we've had a chance to work together a little bit, and hopefully, you know, sometime within the coming year, we'll have a structure in place that can serve as an initial shelter for women who are need a place to temporarily get out of an abusive relationship. So you really need all of those elements to start getting at all of the different facets of what goes into abuse and how do you actually address it.
Yeah. Let me just add, this is very interesting what the ambassador has said on the child, on the girl child. I think my problem sometimes when I discuss these issues with people is to focus on the girl and say, this is how you protect yourself. And we're saying nothing about these young men who are causing this havoc. And I believe if we're going to be talking about gender equality, what we tell the girls should be appropriate. What we tell the boys should also be appropriate. Put together, these must change the attitudes of both, so that the young men grow up knowing that they have to respect the woman. At the moment, no. And then maybe finally on that one, I do wish we would get that.
I know.
As we learn, there's an opportunity to amend and include the things that we think are going to be important. That's what laws are there for.
Okay, there's a comment. Now we're moving on to comments and questions from our audience. There's one, I think it's mainly a comment from Dombigai Senyoni. Dombi is saying that I think it is not just an issue of males or females that are holding up gender equality, but it is rather all patriarchal gatekeepers who may be men, women, as well as institutions. Are you aware, DPM, of any institution that you may be regarded as a gatekeeper of this patriarchal setup that we see in society?
No, I'm not aware, but I know individuals who behave in that manner. I don't know any sort of institutions that are behaving that way.
Okay.
Because the institutions that we have in the country, you know, Lutsango and other institutions, they are promoting gender equality. This is why I've said the men must join in and have their own force, you know, their own group to deal with it. So, no, the answer to that question or comment is no, but I do know individuals who are anti any gender equality.
But if I can also, you've talked about your work with the Kombi drivers and socialization of men. I have to be honest that there is also a role for socialization of women here. There was a survey, I forget how long ago, but there were questions about when is it okay for a man to beat his wife? And there was a very high percentage of women who said it was okay for a man to beat his wife if she burned the dinner.
Oh.
And that speaks to the sort of the generational work that needs to happen, that it's not just convincing men that it's not okay to beat women, but it's also getting women to understand that it's not okay to be beaten. And in the US, I don't know if you have a similar phenomenon here, but when I was growing up in the States, if a little boy hit a little girl, they would say, oh, that means he likes you. and just think about how destructive that is for when that young woman grows up. Because from the very earliest age, you've been told that actually violence means he likes you. Yeah. So it's a socialization issue that cuts across age and gender.
Yeah.
I agree.
Then we have Gunene Hentin, who's talking about, you mentioned the 3 stages, like prevention up to protection. So I guess he's on the prevention part of it, that we focus mainly on SODV, which is just punishing people. What happens to the fixing the problem, like preventing it, like the societal moral decay? Are we working on that space, DPM, whereby we're working on fixing the decay that is causing all these problems?
Yes, we are. But I just want to start by saying societal moral decay, where does it come from? Mm-hmm. Does it just drop from the sky? Or it happens where we are, in our own space? So I think that we need to think from that perspective. How do you prevent that societal moral decay? Because society starts from a family, then it moves on to a community and society. Somebody is neglecting their responsibility in that basic unit of society, which is the family. So I think, having said that, I want to come to this SODV. I think the issue of penalizing, this is focusing on just one aspect. This SODV, we teach people not to rape, not to harass, not to do that. That is teaching, it's not penalizing. And that's what we do. As the ambassador said, I've been in Kumbi's buses and saying to people, don't do this. I was trying to make sure that those people will avoid being penalized. Because if you do what we tell you not to do, you will be penalized. Because if we don't penalize, what's going to happen? Nothing. So the penalties follow our education. Because we say, and from time to time when we get an opportunity, we say, don't rape, don't commit incest, don't harass people, don't stalk. All these things we say don't. This is educating you. Ask if I don't rape, what do you want me to do? The answer is don't rape. So if you don't rape, you're not going to be penalized. That's my answer to that comment. But
Okay,
we are working on it. You asked that question. We have a policy now where we are going to be we're going to be launching, and we are promoting positive parenting, which will solve that issue of social decay. We hope. Positive parenting. We also, as we promote that positive parenting, it may not happen in the next 5 years because it's going to take some time. But we will suffer in the process, and we will be getting pushbacks and which we are getting right now. But we will get it through. 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, we will look back and say, we don't regret we did this. The society has changed, and I believe it will change.
Okay, there's a question from Zoleto Dlamini. He's asking your office, what is it doing to address the shortage of social workers and communities who are responsible for providing psychosocial support and counseling to Eswatini who have to heal from the head, and also helping educating people on gender equality? Okay,
first of all, I wish I could have every request. If I wanted 100 psychosocial workers, I would have them. But there's budgetary constraints. We can't do that, it's obvious. But what we're doing, we're engaging local communities, the church, the people who are in the communities, to be able to deal with these issues, rather than look up to government to employ social workers. We have a responsibility. Landiso, the majority of Eswatini go to church. And this is where they need to begin getting counseling. They don't have to wait until they will go to some place and get. Those must, in my view, the church must participate. I know churches that participate. I deal with them and I ask some of the pastors, please, can you counsel that case? Can you help us with this case? It's happening. It's just that we can't have social workers out there.
Yeah. Anything to add, Ambassador? Okay. Let's move to Nogwanda. Nogwanda, she wants an update on the sex offender registry that is mandated by the SODV Act. Most countries have made it publicly accessible. What is the rationale behind keeping it a secret in Eswatini? Why are we not seeing the people who are doing these things?
Let me start with keeping it secret. There is nothing secret about it.
Do we have it in place? Like, do we have the list?
I'm coming there. That's why I wanted to start by emphasizing that there's no secret about it. Okay. If you look at the regulations that were passed recently, maybe about 3-4 weeks ago, it talks about that registry, because you need to get it in the regulations, SODV regulations. Now those regulations have passed. The next stage is now to appoint the registrar, who is now going to keep that record. But those who are already, the regulations also now empower the registrar to go and get your record, Tandis. Put it in that. For as long as it happened after the start of this piece of legislation, you're going to go in there. And people must avoid going into that, because you may find that you will not be allowed to work where there are children, where there are people with disabilities. You can't even start a business where you will be working with children. So if you're a second offender, you're done, finished, according to the piece of legislation and the regulations. And that is mandated by Section 195 of the piece of legislation we are talking about.
So it's coming.
Oh yeah, it is there. It is there. It's just that things, when we deal with these things, things don't happen like boom on the same day. There are processes, parliamentary processes and everything. So we are there. And I bet you, if you see me in the office of the Deputy Prime Minister, understand this will happen.
Okay, Ambassador, I'm not too sure whether the US has such a registry. If it's in place, is it helping in any way? Do you think it's something that we can aspire to have? And is it going to help us in any way?
So there are sex offender registers in the US. I am not entirely sure whether it is a national level register or if it is state by state. And I suspect it is state by state. And I was listening to a story over the weekend about problems that those state boundaries cause in not having information transferred from one state to the next. So the short answer is yes, we do have sex offender registers. Yes, they do work to a certain extent, but our system is not without its own problems.
To Simelanela Ngozo is just SOTV has been effective. I agree too. Those of us who have been around for decades before SOTV can attest. So SOTV has been a game changer, and we applaud the DPM for being a true champion. That one is just a pat on the back.
Thank you.
Then this one is just applauding the embassy for availing such opportunities to address such important issues. Then one last one, because I want to give you an opportunity to at least give us a way forward in terms of gender issues. What do you advise that we may do going forward to make sure that at least by 2022 we may see even more greater strides in the space? Please move forward, just for me to read this one. Okay. Kaba Favor Mhlanga is complaining about the incompetence of the justice officers. He said they also need to be trained in handling such issues as rape and violations of any form, because people are afraid to report their cases, fearing that these same officials who cannot handle these things professionally leave the victims feeling like they brought this upon themselves. DPM, I know you have had cases where people are complaining about the desk officers when they go to the police station, for example, where they feel like they are being harassed for the very second time when they're reporting, as if they played a role in being a victim of sexual offense, for example.
Yeah, I've had such complaints, but I think the training is ongoing.
Okay.
You see, I always say to people, if you are serving, you must serve. If you have come to work, then it's a pity, because if you have come to work, you will not be responsible. So anybody who makes that a victim, who makes the victim feel like they've done something wrong, is in the wrong place, you know. But the training, we discuss with the public prosecutor and the police, and we try and train those people who are in the domestic violence unit, so that the issues are handled by those who have been trained. This is why in the police service there's the domestic violence unit. We work closely with them. So they're more like working in the DPM's office, if you will. But the difference is that they are in the police unit. So, but if someone is really making you feel really terrible, call my office. I'm going to talk to the National Commissioner, and we will put that person to order. We can't allow that. If it's happening, it shouldn't be allowed to do that. But also it says a lot about that individual, you know, where they come from, how they, you know, they reached there, and, you know, what are they doing there? Because they should be serving the people, not just waiting for the month-end check and go drink. And
unfortunately, time is not on our side, so we are not able to continue to, you know, to engage with our audience. We have 4 minutes left to the end of our session. So with this 2 minutes each, can you just give us, Ambassador, give us direction. What would you think are the main sectors or whatever issues that need to be addressed in the gender space if Eswatini is to move forward?
Okay, cut me off when I hit my 2 minutes. Short term, I think particular attention needs to be on these teen pregnancies that are coming out of COVID, and finding ways that make sure that these young women can continue on with education. Because if you cut off their education when they give birth, then you're basically setting up the next generation for not achieving their full potential. Things like gender inclusive budgeting. You know, I went back to the National Recovery Strategy today. and I saw that women were only mentioned twice. And one of them talked about benefits trickling down, and I thought, you know, that just doesn't sound like women had a voice in the formulation of this, so it doesn't seem like it's going to translate into real attention to how this impacts women. And longer term, it's the participation issue, creative ways of participating, but also getting women into elected office at all levels. Don't forget municipal councils, Bukopo, all of the levels. Get them into parliament, but focus on the other elections as well. And the economic empowerment piece. I was lucky enough to go to a great event yesterday with Toki Hao, talking about how she has this activity that now is reaching into all of the rural communities, or tapping into the knowledge and skills that exist in the rural communities. Giving women the tools to be able to flourish with their creative ideas and business sense, I think can go a long way.
Yes, that's the end of your 2 minutes,
Okay.
TPM. TPM,
Okay,
what's
quickly.
on the top of the agenda in the gender issues that you're discussing in your office? Where to from now?
Well, I will just concur with the ambassador. Immediate, right now, we need to get those girls who have fallen pregnant back to school to proceed and continue with school. Secondly, we need to trace the boys, because we tend to forget about the boys. They need help. They're sitting there, they don't know, because we're shouting at them, they don't even know. They need counseling as well. They need to be talked to make sure that they continue with school as well. Because some of them run away from school because they get embarrassed. We should be out there as parents and teachers and everybody to try and talk to them. And wherever they've gone wrong, give them a second chance. Like everybody, we're all sitting here, we had our second, third, fourth chances in life. So we need to do that. And then the other thing that we need to be doing, which we are doing in the office, is to do an advocacy on teenage pregnancy. Because we need also to catch those big fish, the old men who make the kids pregnant because of situations that we don't know. But we're trying to get that too. My last minute, I don't know if, but going forward, we need advocacy, and everybody has to get involved.
Yeah.
That is long term. The socialization, we have to talk about it like we are mad. Go for it. Make such noise that, you know, even those who don't like it will like it. We will push until they love it, so that this situation, we can deliver peace. As His Majesty has always asked for peace, we can all get together and deliver peace in 2022.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of our session. Unfortunately, I know it's a very interesting and a very broad subject, and you were contributing and asking very relevant questions, and it's a pity that we couldn't go through all of them. But I trust in whatever spaces that you're working on, or wherever you are, you'll make sure that you have these conversations, because each and everyone has a role to play in ensuring that we reach our goals in terms of achieving gender equity and equality. From me, Thandi Sokininza, and my very honorable panelists here, the DPM of the Kingdom of Eswatini, Themba Masuku, and Her Excellency, the Ambassador to the U.S., of the United States of America to Eswatini, Madam Lisa Peterson. Thank you so much for your time and for your data and for your comments. A very good evening to all of you.
Thank you. Be safe.